Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to this Saturday edition of Let's Talk with me, Julie Alli. On the program, we're going to be talking to Fatima Gabru about G-Art. We also talk to Johara Hassam, the Sisterhood United in Deen. But first up, a very riveting story, an equally riveting book. It is called Dragons and Butterflies. The author is Shani Krebs. He has been on the show about 3 years ago, just when the book was launched. And he is the guy that got banged up abroad, but he's lived to tell the tale. And we're going to hear all about that and how has life been since he's been released from a prison, one of the harshest prisons in the world in Thailand. So what's life like? And are people prepared to give you second chances? Shani Krebs was a drug addict for 16 years. He is now clean for 24 years. God bless. Morning, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me again.
Lovely to have you here. You were on the show about 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago.
That's
shortly
correct.
after your book was launched, Dragons and Butterflies.
Yes.
I read the book, very riveting. How much of the book is absolutely true? Do you have some sort of sensationalism there just to keep the reader gripped and interested?
Yeah. No, not at all. It's 100% true. So it wasn't sensationalized. I remember I once read a book of somebody else who was in the same prison and in Thailand, and I don't want to mention the name of the book, but I just thought, are we in the same place? Because I'm experiencing this very differently to what he had. So no, it's all true.
You were banged up abroad.
Yes.
You were much younger then, obviously. What was going through your mind when you decided to go to Thailand for a wild party? And that is what it was. You know, you were going there for the drugs, for the sex and everything else, all the dark things that go with it.
So, I wasn't actually familiar with life in Thailand and that it was possibly the sex capital of the world. At that stage in my life, I was quite desperate, and any money that I made went on drugs. So I was selling drugs to support a habit. And I'd agreed to carry the drugs because I thought I would get more money and then I could use more drugs. So
you were in fact a mule.
I was more of a drug trafficker.
The difference being?
So the difference was that I knew what I was getting myself into, and I'd been dealing with drugs already. I'd been selling drugs for 16 years on the streets of Johannesburg, and the guy who I was involved with in the coke business had now started to export China white from Thailand to New York, and he'd asked me on several occasions if I wanted to get involved with him. And because heroin was considered a bad luck drug and was killing people, I actually thought it would be a bad karma. But eventually I had agreed because I'd hit rock bottom at the time and my family wanted to disown me, and they said I should just take a holiday, go to Israel or go wherever, but just get out of Johannesburg and clean up your act. So when I went to the travel agent to like maybe go to Israel, they were having a special for people who wanted to go to Thailand. So I thought, well, okay, cool, I can kill two birds with one stone, So I booked a ticket to Thailand and got hold of my guys and said, listen, I'm ready to do this. So that's what it was. I was there with a purpose to fetch the drugs. So at the same time, because I was so wild in those days, I went to the clubs and I just, like you said, it was one big party, which maybe was to my detriment.
How did you get picked up?
So I was caught actually at the airport, but from the time that I arrived, I suspected that I was being watched and I was being followed. So I was set up basically. But they waited for me to get to the airport because that carries the death penalty.
In Thailand?
In Thailand. So most of the guys who they know are carrying drugs, who they suspect, they'll follow you until you're at the airport.
I've been told that there's a certain look that a drug addict, a dealer, a mule, a trafficker has about them. that they're such a dead giveaway as far as the authorities are concerned. Do you agree with that?
Well, listen, I mean, Thailand, they're on the ball, okay? So, I mean, there were some guys who were with me in prison who never used drugs. They were a little bit older than me. I mean, there was an old guy there who'd done about 8 trips successfully. He didn't look anything like a drug dealer, but eventually they caught him.
He was a trafficker.
Yes. So the thing is, it just depends, you know. I mean, maybe I do look like a drug addict, drug dealer, but also, you know, they're so on the ball, so they can see somebody comes in, maybe I was a little bit nervous, you know, but they were actually waiting for me. And I think a lot of people who got caught in 1994 had been ratted out by the drug dealers themselves. So I think it was more political because America was financing the war on drugs and Thailand wasn't showing any bus. So,
just unpack that a little more for us.
Okay, so Thailand America has financed the war on drugs in Thailand, the Golden Triangle, since the Vietnamese War. So recently, and around that time, many foreigners were getting caught, and mainly also a lot of Americans. The year I was arrested, over 21 Americans were locked up. So it was too much of a coincidence. So it is believed that the Americans put pressure on the Thai government to start showing figures of arrests. So because Thailand's also such a corrupt society, and that all the drug dealers were paying the cops for protection, the cops then went and said to them, look, you've got to start giving up some of your clients. And that's what happened. I was sold out by the drug dealers.
How do you view the drug scene when you were having this wild party that many years ago as compared to today? And how worried are you? Or do you think that eventually it's going to change, phase out, die out, if perhaps all of these illicit drugs become legalized? Would that change the scenario at all?
So I think it's gone worse. I mean, when I was 18, 19, the drug of choice was mainly marijuana, which eventually was cocaine and LSD. But today you've got so many other drugs. And a lot of the kids, I mean, I only started experimenting with drugs when I was 18. Today you find kids of 10, 11, 12 who are exposed to drugs and where drug dealers are actually prowling on younger children. So it is a serious concern. And I think that the only way we can ever win this war in drugs is to educate the children from a very young age. I mean, I do talks at schools, and I know for a fact that my talks have been very powerful. But I think a lot more can be done, especially at government level, where they could introduce the subject of drugs and the dangers into the school curriculum. So it is a serious concern.
What sort of messages do you give them at school, and what age group do you target? I mean, it's fine for someone to come in and say, don't do drugs, it will kill you, or you'll end up, as a no good, etc.
So I don't really tell them not to do drugs. I kind of share my own experience with drugs and make them aware of the dangers. And at the end of the day, life is all about choices. So the fact that a life of drugs basically only has 2 paths. You either ultimately will land up in prison or you might overdose and die from it. So main thing for me is to educate them about the dangers and the consequences.
But if you're in that befuddled state, obviously you can't even make sense. I'm talking about older drug addicts.
Yeah.
So you then got banged up abroad and you were sentenced to 18 years. No, to life, but you were released after 18 years.
That's correct.
Were you even remotely prepared for what you're going to be facing for the next 18 years of your life?
No, not at all, because actually I didn't even know that I would do 18 years. So initially I got the death penalty, which was commuted to life imprisonment, which was 100 years. So I had no idea how long I'm going to be there for. But there was hope because the South African government, according to the consular who visited us, said they were looking at possibly signing a prisoner transfer treaty with Thailand. Most European Union countries and America already had these treaties in place, which meant that if you had a 100-year sentence or life, you would only serve 8 years in a Thai jail, and then they would start to process your transfer papers, and either finish your sentence in your country of origin or get resentenced and fall under the judiciary of your country, which means in some countries you could get paroled after 2 months. Anything below life, like 30 years or 25, you would only serve 4 years. So we were assured that South Africa was going to sign this treaty, but it never actually happened. And then through a series of amnesties granted on occasions of the king, my sentence got reduced. But even there, I had to petition the government not to discriminate against drug dealers and drug addicts because they didn't want to include us in the amnesties. So the first big amnesty was in 1996, where the king was celebrating his 50th anniversary to the throne, making him the longest reigning monarch in modern history. But a new government came into power, and they were taking a much stronger stance on drug offenders, where they said we wouldn't be included in that amnesty. I wrote letters to almost every single human rights organization in the world, putting pressure on the Thai government, first to abolish the death penalty, secondly about some of the conditions and the unrealistic sentencing, but also to include drug offenders. We wanted to be treated equally. I mean, murder cases were getting a much bigger cut than drug offenders. Anyway, the amnesty did come. We were included in it, and my sentence went from 100 years to 40 years after being there for 2 months. So I'm thinking, well, this can't be that bad, you know. It was like, it was a miracle. So I was thinking maybe 10 years. So there was always hope.
Right.
You know?
Let's go for an ad break, and then we'll talk about conditions in prison and life after prison back in South Africa.
Great.
Shani Krebs is my guest. He's written a book called Dragons and Butterflies, and he assures me there's no sensationalism in the book. It is a true account of his time in a Thai prison, and I urge you to go out and buy the book, read it. I did, and I must tell you, I couldn't put the book down. Frightening, and I think this book should be made into a movie. But be that as it may, let's go for an ad break. We'll be back to talk some more with Shani Krebs. Dragons and Butterflies is the name of the book. It's the life story of Shani Krebs. Well, your life's not over yet, you still have a long way to go, but you're 18 years in a Thai prison. Were you remotely prepared for what you were going to be put through in that prison? And it was really a survival of the fittest.
Definitely. So I had no idea what life was like in a prison, only from what you see in the movies. And actually that's quite mild in comparison. So having grown up on the streets of Johannesburg and being a good sportsman, I also did martial arts most of my life. Physically I was prepared for anything that came my way, but emotionally and mentally I wasn't. And conditions in a Thai prison, I mean, are very primitive. I mean, the what's the name's overcrowded, the cells are overcrowded, you don't have beds, you actually take blankets or towels and sew them together. We were literally sleeping on top of each other. Diseases are rampant.
What about abuse, sexual and other abuses in a condition such as that?
So there wasn't much of that because you have what they call the lady boys, which are like transvestites. So they would offer a sexual service. You know, you could actually pay somebody to have sex with them. So rape isn't a big thing in a Thai prison because a lot of the Thai guys are quite feminine and some of them even have breasts. So it wasn't an issue, but more the conditions and the diseases and the open sewage systems. There was constantly this foul stench. So, but on one hand, while it was very primitive, it's probably one of the most advanced systems in the world, in that you had to fend for yourself. Every day was a fight for survival. You had to organize your own food. You had to line up for your own water, and you had to basically pay for everything. So
where were you getting the money from to survive?
So my family supported me, And then as I started to develop my artistic skills, I started painting people's portraits all over the world, which I would send to them. They in return would send me either a parcel or send me money. I had a lot of friends who were scattered all over the world who supported me financially. I had this one woman in London, bless her soul. She used to walk the streets and collect for her Jewish friend who was in a Thai prison. So I think for 10 years she sent me money. And then I had friends in New York who were sending me like $1,000 a year. And then we also used to gamble in prison. So we used to play backgammon, which I was quite a good backgammon player. So, you know, to pass...
So all the things that were illegal, you were still participating in and being involved in the prison system?
Yes, to an extent. I mean, there was also gambling. I mean, guys were playing cards and everything. I kind of stayed away from that part of the gambling. But the backgammon was also fun. We would have competitions. But I introduced backgammon into the prison, and eventually guys were playing every day. It was small money, you know, but also
it was really survival.
It was also helping to pass the time and keeping you sane.
In terms of when you gambled, which we know was totally wrong, and you won, were there ever fights that broke up because of that?
Yeah, there were.
Were people ever killed in all of these frays, etc.?
Yeah, there were. There were incidences where a guy would come and play with you. Not having any money, he'd lose and then he couldn't pay. So, I mean, the prison, I mean, it was full of drugs. The guards ran the gambling. So only the guards won at the end of the day. But you had drug dealers selling drugs, and you'd have like these guys who would come with knives to rob them. So, I mean, it's another world. It's absolutely crazy what went in there.
How did that shape you? I mean, after you got out of prison, whilst in prison, how did it change your character, your personality?
Yeah.
And how's it shaped you now for life?
So listen, when I came out, I did have issues. You know, I mean, I had maybe suppressed a lot of my emotions, and there was an anger festering inside me that I didn't even realize was there.
Where was it coming from? Your incarceration?
From my incarceration.
But that was your own fault?
Also, yes. Also, to survive there,
yes.
I became very aggressive. And I'd risen in the ranks of the hierarchy, where I was like quite a big deal. So when I came out, it was very difficult to adjust, because in prison I was somebody important, and suddenly I come out into the free world, you're nothing.
Let's just go back to the prison, and you said you rose through the ranks.
Yeah.
Was that through brute power or other means that you earned respect and started rising up?
So there was, I had to fight obviously to get where I was. But also I was a human rights activist, and I fought for our rights.
Whilst in prison?
Yeah, and I also got telephones into the prison. I got clean water into the prison. I changed the whole mindset of the Thai people, who are like... they've got the utmost respect for authority, and they never fought for their rights. I mean, the human rights violations there were shocking, and that's one of the things that I thought I was going to stand up for.
And all that is contained in the book?
It's in the book. So I earned my respect through also being honourable. You know, so, I mean, you're on like an acre of ground with 1,000 prisoners. Sure. So your weaknesses are exposed, your strengths are revealed. I was also very involved in sport. I was also teaching art in prison, and I was also helping fellow inmates to rehabilitate.
So it kind of almost brought out your human side, the empathy.
Definitely.
The paying it forward, doing your bit. It almost made you human from this hardcore drug addict that went in before he was banged up. But it could have gone the other way, could it not?
Definitely could have gone the other way. I mean, I could have continued using drugs. The prison was full of drugs. But I also realized that if I did continue, I wouldn't make it out alive. And I couldn't subdue the pain. I had to feel the pain, all the emotion I was going through. So I managed to compartmentalize a lot of it. But the pain that I was feeling, and leading a life of deprivation, that made me feel more alive than ever, because prior to going to prison, I was on drugs all the time. So
numbing all the feelings.
Yeah, numbing the pain. So suddenly, I'm feeling so alive, and I'm cleaning up my act. I'm self-rehabilitating.
Do you go cold turkey?
So I didn't really go cold turkey because prior to going in, I had 2 seizures. I almost died. So I was already like weaned off drug, but the craving was there, you know. So the thing was, I felt after 3, 4, 5 years into my confinement that when I was on drugs, I was more of a prisoner than when I was in prison because I became a prisoner to the drug. The drugs ruled my life. But here I am in prison, playing sport, doing art, becoming the leader of the foreigners, and actually changing the things in the prison. So my life had a purpose. And while I was a drug addict, I was running around meaninglessly. Life had no meaning. I didn't care if I lived or died. So it was quite a contrast, and definitely changed me, obviously, for the better.
Mm-hmm. The greatest challenge for you whilst in prison?
I think was facing the long sentence and being away from my family, being in a foreign country. So that was very difficult for me, and I was hoping we'd get transferred closer to South Africa, well, back to South Africa, closer to my family. So also,
despite everything that you put your family through, being an outright drug dealer, trafficker, drug addict yourself, they didn't give up on you, did they?
No, they didn't. But also, you must remember that while I put my family through heartache and them watching me destroy myself, I never took anything from my family. I never involved them in any of my dealings. Like most drug addicts, steal from their family and everything. So in that way, I didn't allow my addiction to affect their lives directly, but they were devastated. I mean, they were heartbroken.
Absolutely.
Because they just watched me killing myself, you know.
Right, and getting into all sorts of trouble.
Yeah, so and they were always there to pick up the pieces.
Back in South Africa,
yes.
How did you start adapting and decide that I need to do something meaningful? And that's where the book was born, was it not?
Yeah, so even while I was in prison and very early into my confinement,
did you start journalizing?
I started sending my sister letters, and I said to her from very early into my confinement that one day I want to write a book. People have got to know about drugs, about prison, and about how it's affected my life. And I asked her to keep all my letters.
Wow.
And everything was journalized for 18 years.
And she held on to all of that?
Every single letter. So when I came out, my main purpose was to write the book, because I knew that the book would not only change lives, but would also promote my art and sorry, what were you going to say?
I just want to show this book, the cover of the book, up to the camera. Dragons and Butterflies is what it's called. I'm absolutely riveted by the story. Not the first time I hear it. I've read the book and I've had Shani on several interviews, and I still don't tire of the story.
So writing it was my
purpose. You had purpose. And that is what gave you that push, so to speak. But still, it must have been difficult coming back to South Africa and picking up the pieces. Your family, you have an amazing sister by the name of Joan, who has not stopped supporting you, an angel of mercy. But what about other people around you? Were they prepared to give you second chances?
So, you know, a lot of the people that supported me on my journey, I had a responsibility to them. You know, so imagine all these people sending me money from different parts of the world, and I'm squandering it on drugs. So the thing is, as an addict, we're always very selfish.
Absolutely.
And we don't really care about ourselves. But then my mindset changed, and I had a responsibility to my family, who also were supporting me financially.
Did you ever repay anyone back?
And to all the other people. So the only way I could repay them was to do like family portraits, to draw their kids.
Okay.
Today I help my family wherever we can. We're involved in a little business together. We make biltong. So over the years, it's difficult to rebuild my life, and at the same time, but a lot of the people who helped me, it was unconditional help.
Absolutely.
You know, so I've got such great friends.
So there are good people out there in the world.
There are. But
they outnumber the baddies.
Definitely. But
Shani,
yeah.
We've come to the end of the interview. 2 minutes to wrap up time.
Okay.
The books are still available at all bookstores?
It should be available exclusive, but you can get it online on a Kindle.
Right, and
Or I also sell them, so if they want to
how
contact
do they get in
me,
touch with you?
so you can find me anywhere. Just Google 18 years in a Bangkok prison.
There you go. And the strong message you want to give out in terms of support, in terms of success, and in terms of don't do drugs.
Yeah, so listen, I mean, life is all about choices, you know. So I think if I had met somebody like me when I was a youngster, I would never have done drugs. Do I have any regrets in life? I don't. But if I could have my life again, I'd certainly do it without drugs because, like I said earlier, I mean, it's destructive. Not only are you destroying yourself, but you're also destroying your family and all the people around you. And through my art now, I found meaning and purpose.
You sell art as well?
I sell my art. I've sold around the world. I had a gallery for the last 4 years. And like I said to you earlier, I've now developed this drug recovery program.
Tell us more about it very quickly.
Okay, so it's called the 4-Step Shani Krebs Drug Recovery Program, which is basically about motivational mentoring. It's meaning through art. It's creative writing. And then we've got exercise. So those are part of the program. But then we also have the 4 principles, which is responsibility, second chances, challenges, which are triggers, and thirdly, purpose. Because I believe if you have purpose in life, life becomes so much more meaningful. So we try to get our patients to reflect. It's also through journaling everything. So through self-reflection, like what I went through, that's how I managed to rehabilitate myself. So
does journaling help?
It definitely does.
All the dark phases you've been through,
know,
all the hurt you've caused.
Journaling helps a lot, and it's very therapeutic. I mean, for me, writing the book was so cathartic, and especially afterwards when I was editing it. And then through art, I mean, I rediscovered who I am through art, and you can express all that and come to terms with it and get over those demons. Listen, if I could stop drugs, I think anybody can.
Absolutely.
But you just need the right structure or the right program.
That's where we leave it. Fascinating story.
Thanks for having me, Julie.
People are going to go out and buy the book, I do know that.
Great.
And they can reach out to you for either the 4-step support or rehab program.
Yeah.
Or to commission some artwork from you, or anything else they need to.
Mentoring. I'm often called in as a mediator to families to help them with the addict the person addicted in the family. I also teach art. Wow. I do motivational talks.
Well, you certainly have a very full life. God bless, and may you grow from strength to strength.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Lovely talking to you once
Always.
again.
Thank you, Julie.
Go well.
Thank you.
The story of Shani Krebs, and it is in this book called Dragons and Butterflies. I've read the book, and he assures me there's absolutely no sensationalism in the book. It's his life as he lived it. Hard, cruel, cold, cutting edge, all in the book. Go out, read it, and relook your own situation. Don't go away. We're going for an ad break, and we'll be back with some more fascinating guests. And from the dark, dingy, horrific Thai prisons and the world of drugs, we now move into a space of sublimity, beauty to the eyes, the soul, and the spirit. We're going to be looking at art, and we're going to be talking to an amazing person. I know her from way back, and her life has taken such a turn. She's going to share all of that with us. Her name is Fatima Gabru, and she has introduced something called G Art. Assalamu alaikum, welcome to the program.
Wa alaikum salam. Thank you for having me.
Lovely to have you here, and what a life, what a journey. I know you from the days of community radio, and of course you've moved on to many other different things in life. At the time, I also remembered you were involved in something called Play Ball. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, Play Ball, I was a franchisee holder for the Fordsburg Mayfair area, and it's a sports movement program for young kids, and I really enjoyed that. It was about 7 years of my life. I taught it through different preschools in the area, and I always have this affinity for children, and I work well with them, I play with them, and this was a wonderful way to get into this world of children, but with an empowerment program. The best part of play ball for me was teaching them skills, not particularly sports skills. I wasn't out there to make sports stars, but for children to actually believe in themselves when they're empowered with skills. So that's
how did that process work?
So
because play ball is still a very big part in lots of communities. Lots of franchises are still running with the program. It's not a fly-by-night that fizzles out after a couple of months or a couple of years.
No, not at all. It's still going very strong. It's still very much a needed part of children's growing up process in life. So it's about a program. We focused on 7 different sports at that time. I knew that. When you think about 7 different sports, no, we were not looking at producing stars in hockey or cricket or tennis, but it's about teaching children the different skills towards these things, and it actually equipped them for other life challenges. I think the best comment I got was a fellow teacher from the Mayfair Montessori School. She thought when we came along that we just go out there and play with the kids, and then her nephew enrolled for one of the classes, and she said the best thing that came out, he was about 3 at the time, and within 6 months, she says, I've seen an amazing change in him. He used to always cry and squeal when kids got along and got together in the family. And suddenly 6 months later, after being in the play ball program, this youngster, he was equipped with skills. He would take part. He would go ahead and do things. And he wasn't crying or squealing.
So somehow you instilled confidence in him.
Absolutely. It's a wonderful confidence building program. It's a wonderful skills building. I mean, that's what skills are.
Absolutely.
You're constantly building skills in life, and it gives you the confidence to do things. It gives you life experiences. It gives you life challenges, how to overcome them, and how to make a plan with the skills that you have. And that's what was good about the program.
So that was 7 years of your life. Why did you move away from play ball?
I think I just had at that point I decided, no, I needed a change in life.
Okay.
So I moved away from play ball. I did a stint as a journalist, or a reporter rather, at a local magazine. And then life changes I experienced with my parents passing away. So
I'm sorry to have heard about that, yes.
And then it just gives you a different perspective on life and different introspection. So you look at it, and I went back to my studies actually. I completed my BA a while back, and then I decided to go back to the University of Johannesburg. I went there to do my honors in English, and it was a wonderful experience actually to go back as this more mature, more skilled person.
And just looking at things, challenges, life, campus life, your lectures, etc., from a different worldview, because you've been through so much, you are more matured, you've had a couple of life lessons, and things just take on a totally different perspective.
Yeah, I mean, the best part for me, in 2011 actually, when I was focusing on my honors, and I did do a short stint into my master's, which I didn't complete, but I learned a lot from it. But the point was that I actually went into Palestine solidarity work. I think if you remember, I've always been committed to the struggle, and I still am. And I went back as a skilled person, and I went back and I spoke to youngsters and got them involved in the movement. I think the time when I was there, and I realized also that the Palestine solidarity movement could not be part of the Muslim youth movement, because it's not a religious issue. It's a human rights issue.
Absolutely.
So it had to be separated from the Muslim Students Association, And as such, I was instrumental in setting up a Palestine Solidarity Forum on the University of Johannesburg campus. And in those 3 or 4 years that I was there, it was wonderful. We were a small group, very committed group, and we hosted quite a few keynote speakers coming to the university and delivering their perspective on the Palestine Solidarity movement. And it was wonderful, absolutely wonderful to be able to do that from a stronger, more mature point of view, and I knew I had to do this as well.
Not a young person just very full of fire and wanting to take the world on. So you move on. Where are you now as far as the Palestine Solidarity movement is concerned? I know you are still involved, but there are other splinter groups as well. Is there any, like BDS, and maybe you all have a different probably goal as far as the support of the Palestinian people are concerned. But do you not think that if you guys merge at some point, that a stronger message and more effort can be put into your shift for the change as far as Palestinians and their rights are concerned?
Well, exactly what you're saying. This past weekend, actually, only this was a meeting between the different groups, Palestine Solidarity groups, there was some controversy with leadership in the BDS movement, and we won't go into that, but it created a huge sort of schism in the Palestine Solidarity movement in South Africa. And this weekend I wasn't there. I have comrades who were there. I'm not that involved anymore. I'm much more a desktop activist currently. But they brought all these groups together now, and they're working towards a South African BDS coalition, which is exactly what you're saying. This is how we should go forward, united, bring the groups together, work hard at building up a solidarity movement without controversy, work hard at ensuring that South Africa as a solidarity movement is always out there and speaking solidarity for the Palestinian people.
We're here to talk about your art, which we will focus on in a little while, but I cannot let this opportunity go by without picking that amazing brain of yours and talk more about the Palestinian issue. That was not on the agenda at all, but let's just stick with it for a bit. There's been lots of development or the Palestinians have been disenfranchised even further. Instead of the situation getting better, we're in the 21st century, everyone's talking 4IR, the world is moving at a very rapid pace, but what seems to be happening with the Palestinian issue is that they just seem to be going backwards and backwards and backwards. They are so marginalized that soon it's almost as if they won't be in existence any longer, and that's what is so scary for me. How do you view the situation? Very especially recently when they're talking about one-state solution, two-state solutions, the apartheid wall, Bethlehem becoming, the capital of, what was it? Jerusalem, I beg your pardon. Jerusalem, Trump has made some very wild statements about Jerusalem being the center,
So my personal opinion about this, and it's from a lot of reading and a lot of discussion with friends and people, comrades in this movement. I think at the core of understanding this is about imperialism. It's about colonialism. The huge human rights violations that constantly go in there. The state of Israel has been imposed on an indigenous population to begin with and to end with. Its entire objective is the ethnic genocide of Palestinians. Constantly the narrative is to take away the Palestinian state, to deny the existence of a Palestinian state, to deny the existence of Palestinian people. And if you keep that in mind, all these talks of peace and two-state solution, one-state solution was just red herrings. The entire objective has always been the ethnic genocide of the people. And unfortunately, the politics or the power politics of the world has always been in the favor of the colonialists and the imperialists and their strong allies. So until we defeat that, unfortunately, it's the biggest fight. It's not only Palestine. It's every other place in the world that's been subject to colonialism, subject to imperialism. It's the fight when you understand.
Or ethnic cleansing, like Myanmar and other such places.
Absolutely, it's power struggles. It's these leaderships. It's these leaderships who have convinced people that they have the inroad into some kind of civilized way, and we must get rid of these uncivilized beings. And they control the narrative to say who is civilized when they are doing the violence, and to say who is uncivilized when the violence is being meted out on people like the Palestinian people.
With 2 minutes to our next ad break, let me ask you this question. As a Muslim yourself, how do you feel about the restrictions of Muslims, locals, Palestinians, and visitors from abroad to access the Al-Aqsa Mosque? And just the way they've annexed it as well.
Well, it's part of the entire colonialism project.
Of course, yeah.
To take over the entire... It's always been the objective to take it over. So it's always been the narrative of building up the Palestinian as the so-called terrorist, the Palestinian as the one who's the violator, the Palestinian who's the one who carries the bomb. So it's all part of the bigger plan. It's not separate from it. As a Muslim, I don't see it separate from that. And I think to turn it into a Muslim does the entire situation wrong. You
Simply
have to look
because it is close to the hearts of Muslims, Christians, and Jewish people.
Absolutely. I mean, when you go to Palestine, I mean, I met as many atheists as I met Muslims. I met non-Muslims, I met Christians. I have good friends who are Christians in Palestine. So to focus it as an Ummah issue, to focus it on a Muslim issue, is to actually do it down as a human rights issue. We cannot focus, as Muslims, we shouldn't focus on something because our Muslims brothers and sisters are being violated. But you see it as a human rights issue, and then I believe you're viewing it from a better Muslim perspective.
Okay, the controversy around the Jerusalem embassy, how do you think that's going to play out? Is that still really a thorn in the sides of the Palestinians?
Of course it's going to be a thorn in the side. I mean, it's constant. I mean, myself, I've traveled to Palestine since 2003. I went in 2005 again, I went in 2007 again. It was huge to see this entire shift in terms of just the land, just the spatial politics that was going on there, and the taking over of Palestinian homes, lands, businesses, places where they pray as well. And you constantly have to remind yourself that this is what's happening in Jerusalem. It's constantly being stolen away from the indigenous population.
And there's absolutely nothing for now. It seems that they're absolutely helpless and hopeless in the situation. What needs to happen to change this narrative?
As activists, we are...
Hold that thought. Let's go for our ad break. I'm talking to Fatima Gabru. It was meant to have been an interview about her art. We will get to that in a minute or two, inshallah. But I couldn't resist talking to her about her activism as far as Palestine and other issues are concerned. So do stay with us and do indulge me, because I do think that there's lots to learn from this little conversation with Fatima, who's been involved in the struggle for so very many years. Welcome back. We're talking to Fatima Gabru. In a minute or two, we're going to touch on her latest venture, which is Fatima G Art. But one final question to her regarding the Palestinian situation. It's been going on from the 1948s. We're in the 21st century. Do you see a light at the end of the tunnel? Will the Palestinian people eventually get back their land, their homeland? Will they be able to come back home, get back their land and settle as the rightful owners of Palestine?
My answer to that would be to have faith and to say, inshallah, it is always in Allah's hands.
Ameen.
But we constantly have to strive. Activists have been busy doing what they always do. We're a small amount of people. I have had many people tell me, but why should I go to a march? Why should I do a protest? It's a building up. It's a constant knocking. I think one of the activists told me when I was feeling very despondent at a particular time in Palestine, he says we constantly have to knock at this very tiny nail in the wall. And that's what activists have been doing. If more people could raise their voices, if more people could stay committed to the long-term struggle, inshallah, the end will be in sight for the Palestinian people. Unfortunately, as in South Africa, there will have to be compromises. Land is lost, the colonialists are there, they've settled on the land, they are part of the landscape. But Palestinian rights, inshallah, will have to be recognized at some point. So yes, we do believe it. As activists, Palestine solidarity activists, most of us do have that faith. And I think my father, when he told me, my father passed away in 2008. And I remember that he was telling me in the 1990s, at the height of the South African violence, he told me, I don't think I'm ever going to live to see a free South Africa. Alhamdulillah, he did.
Alhamdulillah.
Many of us didn't think of it. In 1990, you would have asked many South Africans. We would never have thought that we would have lived in a society free of apartheid. We still face a lot of challenges, and that's what Palestinians will also have to face. But inshallah, we are free of that apartheid regime. So inshallah, Palestinians will also be free of that regime.
Ameen, ameen, thumma ameen, and continue your activism because it is sorely needed. From politics, from activism, from writing, from lecturing, we move on to something called Fatima G Art. My, what a talented woman you are! You've now gone into a very sublime space. When, how did this all come about?
I've always been interested in art. From a very young girl, I've always indulged in myself in color, different mediums, crayons, pencil colors. And life, as it came along, I sort of put it on the back burner for a while. I've always been interested in calligraphy. 2 years ago, I did a course with Uncle Rafiq Kaji, and I think you have interviewed him.
Yes, I have had him on the show.
He's a wonderful teacher, and he's a wonderful calligrapher. I think first and foremost, a wonderful calligrapher. And that course, that 6 weeks at the OCAF in Greenside, inspired me to different levels and to actually grow and learn, because the art of calligraphy is about discipline, it's about practice. I always say the wow, which is the sort of key letter in the Arabic alphabet, has taught me about patience, because it's taken me like 2 years to actually get it in that wonderful form that you see that calligraphers come out with. So it's not an easy form. It's not something you can pick up the pen and say, wow, I can do this. It's discipline. So that has taught me in my different formats of my art to actually constantly practice, constantly work at bettering it. And also wonderful things like YouTube videos. I constantly teach myself from those. It's a wonderful learning pattern in life. And that's, I think myself, I constantly love to challenge myself to learn new skills, and I work on them. I don't just learn and move on to the next. I learn and it becomes a part of my life or part of who I am and what I do.
As is your G art as we speak, because you've not only dabbled, you've learned calligraphy, and now you've said that you've had the love of art from the time you were young. But now you've gone on and you're teaching art classes. Must be very rewarding for you.
Well, yeah, that's always been a constant in my life. Somehow I'm always teaching. As a play ball coach, it was teaching skills. As a swimming coach as well, I used to be a swimming teacher as well. I've went into teaching in different levels. When I was at university, I had to take on tutoring, and I did a whole lot of online teaching as well. So it is constant. I love teaching. I love imparting different skills, and I love empowering people. I don't want people to be constantly reliant. My method of teaching is such that I want you to actually discover your way and go ahead and find that way. And that's what I love to teach in my art lessons as well.
So when did you pick up art full time? Because I'm looking at these amazing pieces that you've brought in. This looks like the Johannesburg skyline, vibrant, vivid colors, a piece I'd love to have in my home. And then we have a piece here in the front as well. When and how did you get to this point? Because it's truly very professional.
Thank you. I did go for a couple of lessons. When I went to the lessons, the teacher didn't have to teach me much. She just guided me. And that's the kind of teacher I am as well, because I believe everybody has art in them, and that's the way I teach as well. I believe you have to just believe in yourself. She just guided me. She says, you've done this before. And the drawing took me very quickly to do this. And also what a friend is, actually a friend who's passed on now, but about 6 years ago when we met and he realized I could actually do art, he says, but you have to just do your interpretation. And I was fixated with this perfection. And that sort of
art is not about perfection.
No, not at all.
It's about, as you say, you're going to do a piece of artwork and your interpretation of the piece is going to be totally different to mine.
Absolutely. So that's what set me free. Johannesburg skyline, I'm not an architect, I'm not a photographer. I don't want to replicate what the photographers see. I want to just interpret what I see. I see those profiles, I see those buildings, and I see different colors. We know the sunset, the skies, the different skies during the day, the different colors that come out. And I surprised myself quite a bit when the colors came out. I tend to be a very deep, introspective person sometimes. I can be a bit depressive sometimes. And then these bright colors came out of my painting. I was really, really thrilled with myself. I said, wow, is that inside me? And that's the fun of it. This is actually done in gouache, which is something I learned newly how to use. It's a different form of watercolors. It's more opaque form, and it's actually very fun to use.
Okay.
So it was a lot of fun doing this. And
can I ask you, the actual skyline is beautiful. You can look at it and say that is Johannesburg or any other city, because most big cities do have towers, these phone and satellite towers. But I like the effect at the bottom, the splashes of color, of the color you use. What is that saying? What does it say to you in terms of those splashes of color?
So the wonderful thing about art is it's very forgiving. It teaches you to make mistakes and turn those mistakes into sort of part of who you are. It actually started off as a mistake.
Part of
the artwork. So these dots actually started off as a mistake. And I thought, oh no, I'm going to have to paint over this again. Because as an artist, you paint over things and you keep on constantly fixing up. And then I looked at it and I said, but no, hold on. Let me apply my own philosophy that I love to teach everybody. Let's turn it into part of the artwork. And alhamdulillah, it actually turned out very nicely. I enjoyed it. And then I kept to the colors, which I felt was the strong point of the helping the picture pop. And it's become part of the artwork, and I've done it in the different pieces as well. And I love it because I've done another art, Joburg skyline, and the bottom is clear white. It has a few drops because that's what I want, looking at that sort of the flow, the paint flowing into the bottom. But there was no droplets, and this was a perfect splatter. I actually went in and indulged in splatter, so it was fun. It was lots of fun.
Now I know that the Lens Art Expo has truly brought a lot of artists, brought them out of the woodwork, so to speak. And we've been interviewing a lot of those artists, and we're so pleased to see all of the talent in our community. Does that also then suggest to you as an artist that there's competition? Or is this art about you, your personality, your worldview, your perspective? Is that what goes onto the canvas?
So speaking about the Lens Art Expo, it was the first time I actually went out and gave myself permission to call myself an artist.
Wow.
So it's a wonderful initiative, and I really am looking forward to the next one. I went out there and I said, okay, I'm going to actually put my art out there. It gave me an insight into the different artists who were there. It's a wonderful community. You must remember that art is not part of mainstream education curriculum. So there's actually a need, there's a big need for people to do art on a daily basis, for art to be part of their life. So there's a wonderful number of artists. There's not competition. I don't believe there's competition because I believe there's enough space for all of us, because every person has it in them to do art. And that's why in my post I also say art is for everyone. And that's what I love to instill in my art lessons as well. When youngsters, like a little girl, a 12-year-old, she says, Auntie Fatima, your art is like, you tell us to do these things and then you say we can do whatever we want to. I said, but that's exactly it. There's not a formula, there's not a bullet point way to do art. Art is you listen, you see, you learn, you pick up a few skills, and then you make it your own. What works for you might not work for the next person, but it works for everybody, somehow or the other. So gouache might not work for you. Watercolors might not work for you. Crayons are an underrated medium. I know a friend who went, and this was actually in the 90s, who went through a very depressing time when she lost her first baby. It was during the pregnancy, and then she was in a really depressive state. At that time, when they were not coloring books out, I bought her a gift. I went and bought a coloring book, and I gave her crayons with it. And I said, just have fun. Do whatever colors you want to go for it. And she appreciated it. And then, not about 10 years later, suddenly coloring books are an indulgence and a wonderful thing there. And it's actually great. I actually find coloring books very stressful.
And it's a wonderful form of therapy, of just getting rid of whatever's in you bottled up. And it allows you to give expression. Unfortunately, we've come to the end of the interview. How can people get in touch with you, either to commission a piece of artwork or to enter one of your art classes?
So my email is the quickest way to get through to me. My initial F for Fatima and my surname Gabru, fgabru@gmail.com. So it's Gabru. My telephone number 084-467-3777. I'm available on WhatsApp as well. I do have an Instagram account as well, which is @FatimaGabru.
Okay, brilliant. And may your art forever live on. It is absolutely soothing to the eye. Lovely to realize that you have this within you and that you can bring so much of pleasure through your artwork to other people. So till the next time we meet to see what else you're going to introduce us to as far as your life is concerned. Thank you indeed for being with me on the show this morning.
Thank you, Julie. It was a pleasure being here.
That was Fatima Gabru talking about not only artwork, but we spoke a little bit about her work as an activist, very especially for the Palestinian issue. Still to come, we'll be talking the Sisterhood United in Deen. Welcome back. I have two beautiful sisters in studio with me. They're here to talk about the Sistership United in Deen. Johara Hassam and Aisha are in studio to talk about their journeys. The one is a born Muslim, the other one is a revert Muslim. What are the challenges for born Muslims? What are the challenges for revert Muslims? How do we come together and support each other? Assalamu alaikum, welcome to the program.
Wa alaikum assalam. Jazakallah for having us.
Great to have you both in studio. Johara, your mom runs a Center for Revert Muslims. You're here to talk on her behalf. In your own personal capacity, you are a life coach, alhamdulillah, but in any way you can, you're also holding hands and making a difference to our revert sisters, and also those sisters born Muslims maybe had a very, didn't have a very solid education as far as Islam is concerned. That is a gap you and your mom do fill, don't you?
Well, that is what we aspire to do. My mom is a Muslim for over 30 years, alhamdulillah, but her journey was tough, and she faced a lot of emotional struggles, a lot of physical struggles, coming into an Indian Muslim community. My mom is not Indian, and my mom doesn't conform to the Indian way of thinking, so there were a lot of struggles very, very early on in her Muslim life. So I suppose for her to be so passionate about this was just natural. And for us being her children, it was natural for us to continue in this trajectory to helping people and to reaching out, assisting in creating this network and this platform for women to find each other and to connect with each other, to be able to talk about their struggles and just the difficulties, or just have a shoulder to cry on, or just somebody to chat to laugh with, to, you know that somebody has your back.
We take it for granted when we hear someone has come into the fold of Islam, and as the wider Muslim community, we kind of assume that the family the person's married into will be their support system. But that doesn't necessarily work out that way, either because they may not have the necessary skills or just not interested enough to offer the support. And a lot of revert Muslims do face the struggle you're talking about that your mom has faced 30 years ago. Hopefully in this day and age things are better, stronger, more structures are in place. I don't know. But that's where your mum comes in, doesn't she?
Absolutely. There's a huge gap between the born Muslim community and the revert Muslim community. What is assumed in our community is that when a person becomes a Muslim, they are taken care of. They have the sufficient support to be able to carry them through. They have not only the support in terms of their teaching, but the emotional support, the physical support. All of that is lacking from a revert point of view. And I think as born Muslims, we take it for granted. We were chatting to your producer earlier, and he was saying that he thought that Muslims are handed a starter pack when they take Shahada. I wish it were that simple. I wish that this initiative could grow so much that we are able to give you a starter pack and say, here's your guide on Salah, here's your guide on wudu, here is, just the practicals on how to be a Muslim.
Alhamdulillah, something for you and your mom to think about.
To work on, yes.
To try and do a bit of fundraising and start up these starter packs, because that's a brilliant starting point.
It really, really is. And I think that when my mom realized that there is something lacking in the community, it was so imperative for her to create this platform, because what my mom noticed 30 plus years ago is that reverts will always find reverts, because they connect with each other on more than just an intellectual level. They connect with each other on a spiritual level, and only they can truly understand the essence of each other's struggles, coming from a different background, a different social background, a different cultural background, and only they can really comfort each other the way that sisters would comfort each other. And I feel that when we as born Muslims think about the struggles of a revert, we can't comprehend it, because we've been going to maktab since we're 4, 5, perhaps 6 years old. So for us, the challenges are, we may get frustrated looking at a 30-year-old struggle with the Arabic alphabet and wonder how, why are you taking so long trying to grasp this? But we've been conditioned from a very young age to be able to wrap our tongues around around those letters. But I've seen my mom struggle for years with certain surahs or certain du'as because they haven't been conditioned in that way. And I also feel so impersonal saying they, because even though I'm not a Reba, I've seen the struggles of my mom, and I've seen how difficult it was for her sometimes to adapt.
And I think a lesser person would then possibly, sadly, throw up the deen and walk away. You know, and just feel this is way too much for me. I don't have the support. I'm not understanding this. How am I now still expected to learn the Arabic language to get the essence of the Holy Quran, etc., etc., etc.? What made your mother stick with it?
I think that she had an incredible support system from my dad, from my dad's family.
MashaAllah.
When my mom was a new Muslim, my grandfather would take her to madrasa. We have a really, really close-knit family. But apart from that, I think my grandparents, my mom's parents, being staunch Christian, were really apprehensive in the very, very beginning and really resistant to her change. But they've become her biggest fan base and her biggest support and her biggest encouragement. When my mom wanted to go into niqab over 10 years ago, she was nervous to relay that information to my granny. And when she did, my granny was so encouraging and so supportive and reassured my mom that she would walk proudly next to her, because she knew that when my mom was a Christian, my mom was the best practicing Christian that she could be. So it was natural for her to be the best practicing Muslim that she could be. And to date, my grandfather is late, but until his last breath, he was so encouraging of my parents, of us, and of who we are and of our religion. They stand up for Muslims despite what everyone else sees in the media. They stand up for us. So alhamdulillah, we are blessed in that way, but we also know that not everybody has the same kind of love and support.
Absolutely. So what has mom and you gone on to do to ease the new Muslimah into our deen?
So my mom has this platform called the Sistership, which is a WhatsApp group. It began as a WhatsApp group, and there's going to be an amazing event being hosted soon, just for women to be able to share their journeys, to talk about their struggles. It's struggles that we can't understand and we can't relate to and we can't even comprehend.
But I hope that she's going to invite us born Muslims as well, because we love to interact with our new Muslim sisters.
Absolutely. And I think that it's also imperative for us to be able to recognize what the struggles are so that we know how we can assist, and also to be able to network with these ladies so that they know who they can reach out to when they are struggling with something. But I suppose the core of the sistership is to create this bond for revert sisters, because we may get frustrated with the revert sister with a certain struggle or with a challenge, because it's not something that we may identify with. But bearing in mind, we are all human. Every human struggles with self-awareness, struggles with their identity at some point or the other, struggles with iman highs or iman lows. So for a revert sister, there's a whole new dynamic when you're having those kind of struggles that may not be relatable to a born Muslim. And I would love for all of us to, for us not to have that distinction between revert and born Muslim. And I think that's what we're trying to create here with the sistership.
How long has this been running?
So this has been running for a few years now, but I think the idea was actually born many, many years ago. My mom was asked to help empower a woman that was about to marry a Muslim man and help educate her. Not long after that, my brother was born, and that was 18 years ago. He was born on the 25th of Ramadan. And so 5 days later, it was Eid, and we always traveled to Pietermaritzburg to spend Eid with our family, and we couldn't because my mom had just had a Caesar, and we had a newborn infant baby in our home. And I think that was one of the loneliest days, because we felt a serious isolation that we hadn't felt before, because we have a close-knit Muslim family, but there was that isolation because we couldn't spend Eid with them.
The realization that
yes.
this is how alone
Yes.
a revert or the revert Muslim community actually feel.
Absolutely. And my mom resolved at that moment that she wasn't going to allow anybody to feel that way. So she made it her mission to invite any orphaned family. And I use that word loosely because she invites families who maybe are from out of town, who don't have a home in Joburg, or who is a revert family. And she invites them to spend Eid with us. And now it's alhamdulillah, my mom has maybe about 100, 150 people that share Eid with us. We have ladies on the one side and men on the other side. And over the years, they develop their own Eid traditions, and they go off and they have Eid on their own, and new families join us. But I think my mom was so passionate about not letting any Muslim person feel alone.
Well, tell your mom I'm certainly going to join you guys this coming
look so
Eid,
forward.
just to interact with this amazing woman who you call your mom, and all the other new Muslims, or even older revert Muslims in the community.
We look so forward.
Right, we are talking to Johara Hassan. She's talking about the Sistership United in Deen. What an amazing initiative. In studio also is Sister Aisha. She is a revert Muslim, and after the ad break, we're going to hear her story, her challenges as a new Muslimah or a revert Muslimah. Welcome back. We're talking about the Sistership United in Deen, an amazing organization that was started up by Johara Hassan. I didn't ask her what her mom's name is, but I do know that mom and dad live in Midrand, Johannesburg. But let's get talking to Aisha. She has taken on the Deen a couple of years ago. She has subsequently married a Muslim man. What is her journey been like? How has her family embraced her reversion to Islam, and what are all the struggles she's met with up to date? Assalamu alaikum, welcome to the program.
Wa alaikum salam, jazakallah for having me.
Great to have you here. When you walked into the studio, I mistook you for a Turkish sister, only to learn that you are Afrikaans, born and bred Afrikaans, South African young lady that comes from Potchefstroom. Your journey into Islam, you've embraced Islam some 8 years ago?
Yes.
Alhamdulillah. How did this start? Because a lot of the stories are about girl meets boy, one of them are not Muslim, and due to their dating and eventual marriage, one of them then decide to take on the deen. Your story was pretty different.
Yes, completely different, alhamdulillah. I came across someone on Facebook who mentioned that Christians and Muslims believe the same God, and that made me curious. Why do we believe the Bible is the word of God and not the Quran? So I started reading more about Islam and researching for about 3 months. During those 3 months, I stopped going to church because they could not answer my questions. And then my friend who still went to church told me about the debate on campus that was going to be held by the IPCI. They advertised it in the church, so she came, she told me that it's going to be there, and I decided to go. So I went by myself, and while I sat there and I heard the two men debating, I realized that a Christian will sit here and think, yes, this Christian guy really showed this Muslim guy. And the Muslims will sit there and think, yes, he really showed him with this point.
So both parties will think that we've got
yes, we won this debate.
Yes.
And then I realized, but I was thinking this Muslim guy really won this debate. So I just realized inside I was already convinced that what the Muslim guy was saying is the truth, because this makes sense. And unfortunately, what I was taught throughout my life does not really make sense to a person.
How conflicted were you? Because you were born and raised as a Christian Afrikaner, and here you've started learning about Islam. You attend this debate, and you are now convinced that Islam is the answer. What did that mean for you, and how did that all play out? What was your next step? Because you were an engineering student at the time.
Yes. I think I've always been the type who was a problem middle child who will question my parents on everything. So I started questioning the church. We were in Afrikaanse Protestante Kerk, which means they had quite strict rules that's based on the church, not really the Bible. So I started questioning the beliefs my parents had as a teenager, because it did not make sense to me. Why is only a certain race allowed in the church and all those things? So I have been used to questioning our beliefs also. So during the years, I joined a church that believed the Bible and nothing but the Bible. And that felt better to me, because it at least made sense. This is the word of God, let's only follow this. But then when this got thrown in my face, that there's another book that's also the same God's book. I must learn about this. I mostly just struggled to find a Quran. And I went to the place where I know there are some Muslims in Poch, and I asked the auntie for a Quran, and she's like, a Quran teken daar? And she thought I'm looking for a newspaper because I was Afrikaans asking for a Quran. So then I could not find an English or a translation of the Quran that I could actually understand. And then with that debate, I realized I was already convinced within myself that this is the truth. But then they handed out English translations. And once I had that in my hand, I was like, now I've got the book, I can at least know what I'm going into. And the next day by myself, I just took the Shahada, and I also all from the guidance on a website explain to you how to take it, and they guide you through it. I can't even remember the website's name, but they teach you exactly how to pronounce it, everything, and they tell you the steps to take. So I became Muslim completely on my own.
Did you feel lonely and lost and alone apart from this new revelation in your life? When, how did you start navigating your life in terms of the Christian lifestyle, the halal haram issues, and how did you break this news to your parents? Undoubtedly you might have been ostracized.
I actually had it quite easy with the fact that I was living on my own in Poch. My parents, I grew up on a farm in the Free State, so I was living in a flat completely on my own, which made that quite easy because I could change my religion and they will not really, it won't be in their face. So for some reason, the day after I took my Shahada, my mom messaged me and asked me, did you ever find that church you were looking for? Because she knew I was looking for a specific church and I couldn't find it. And then I replied, no, I'm not going to church anymore. So she asked why, and I said, I'm not Christian anymore. And she immediately asked, what are you Muslim now? Wow. Because she knew I've been telling them also, did you know Muslims believe the same God? And so she kind of expected it. Then for a year, I still carried on going to visit on the farm. Then I won't show them anything of Deen. I would only eat rice and salad, which upset my mom a lot. But it was only visits during the holidays that was actually uncomfortable. While in Poch on my own, I lived by myself, so it was rather easy to just live Islamically. The main difficulty was first to get someone to teach me. But alhamdulillah, after I messaged the IPCI, they responded quickly with another revert sister's contact details. She was from Klerksdorp. She got me into contact with a mufti who could answer all my questions. And I also got into contact with a Mulana in Potchefstroom, and at that time his wife started teaching me every week, once a week. So alhamdulillah, when it comes to knowledge, I had all the support I ever needed.
What were the biggest struggles as far as, a lot of people look at the Muslim community and they associate Muslims in general with Indians. That's true. Not necessarily the makeup of Muslims. Muslims are from all nationalities, creeds, colors, etc. Were you thinking the same thing? I was convinced it's only Indian. Only Indians are Muslims, because that's what we saw growing up. You only see this Indian family with the hijab and things on. It's not like you really saw them. We never even knew the difference between Indian and Muslim. One of my friends, when I told him I became Muslim, he asked me, are you going to have a red dot now? Right. So in their mind, it's like all Indians are Muslim, and they didn't know the Muslims difference between Hindu and Muslim. Absolutely. Even it's how we were brought up. We did not know about the difference. How did your journey progress from there on? You then had to cut ties with your family. How alone and isolated did you feel? And how much of courage, warmth, and comfort were you getting from your new religion, the religion of Islam? Alhamdulillah, I had it much easier than most revert sisters. I know there are those who live with their families, I think have it the hardest, because they have to face whatever the isolation and things immediately if the family decides they don't want anything to do with them. My parents, because it was just visits in the holidays, it was rather easy to still go and visit. The big break came when I decided to get married. The mufti that was answering my questions was teaching me over the phone, and it just got difficult, so we decided it will be easier to get married. And when people hear revert, you get a lot of proposals from Muslim boys, especially especially white reverts. Yes. It's like everyone, the first thing they ask is, will you marry me? And then I would say, well, do you listen to music? If he says yes, I said no, thank you. Or I had my list of questions. Do you have a beard? Do you have this? All my requirements that I've learned, this is a proper Muslim.
So I had all those questions, and then the one guy told me once, you're not looking for a normal person, you're looking for a mufti.
Wow.
So then I decided, you know what, I know this mufti, and he's not married, so then we decided we'd get married. And
how many years later can you say that you're happily married?
Alhamdulillah, it's been 7 years.
MashaAllah. Any children?
4 children.
Right. So in comes Jahara and her mom's support group. Well, you're part of the support system
Yes,
as
it's
well.
my mom's support group.
Your mom's support
her
group.
initiative.
How did you people meet, and when, how you now involved with the sistership of the Deen?
I'm basically just a member of the group. Yeah, I'm not in any authority or position there. I'm just also there to learn still or receive guidance, mainly because I have my intellectual guidance at home. You need emotional help, and
Absolutely.
people don't realize how difficult it is when you change, and it does not stop after a year. It's not okay, I've been Muslim a year now, I'm not revert anymore, or it's ongoing, and there's new challenges, and as your life progresses you get new challenges emotionally, and like through marriage, and then it's children. And now I've noticed since having children, you feel it much more when you are responsible for a small child and you have to raise them and answer them why you can't see your nani and your nana, because I won't tell my small child they don't want to see you because you're Muslim, or they don't want to see you because your mommy married an Indian. So you have to, it brings a whole lot of new drama into your life, and through that you really need the emotional support. And
we've got 2 minutes to wrap up, Jahara. I'll hand over to you. What are the other important messages you want to share with our viewers today about the Sistership United in Deen?
I think an important message to share is that we shouldn't be complacent and think that a revert sister has, or a revert man or revert family has the support, the emotional support and the physical support that you would expect. I feel like if you know that there's a revert, just go all out for them. They don't have the luxury and the comfort of a family, a Muslim family that we have, and I think that that's what we need to extend.
How do people get in touch with your mom and you to become part of the sistership, revert and born Muslim?
So they can get hold of my mom on 082 7733 433.
Okay.
Yes.
Final words from you as a revert sister, 8 years into the Deen, married to a Muslim man and having children of your own, also being ostracized from your family. Has it all been worth it?
yes, it's definitely been worth it. I would suggest to any revert now to be soft with their family and try to not be too rigid in changing. Take it at a pace that your family is comfortable with, then chances of being ostracized by your family would be smaller. And in the end, I think that would have been a better approach.
What else would you have done differently? Because even though your parents and your family are still Christian, they're still your blood family.
Exactly.
And you'd still like to have contact with them.
Exactly, yeah.
And even friends for that matter. What would you do differently if you had the opportunity all over again?
I think I would have just been more open and honest instead of just running away, basically. Where if I sat with them and gone through, we've had our fights, but maybe if we calmed down and I kept on trying to speak to them instead of just thinking, okay, we had a fight and I'm not going to speak to my father for 6 years because we fought, it would have been much better, because eventually I believe they would have answered or spoken back and maybe had a different approach and a different attitude towards me also.
Your advice to revert sisters watching us this morning, what do you want to say to them?
Value the family that you had before you became Muslim just as much as your deen, and please Allah, but also try to keep ties with them.
May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you every step of the way. You're beautiful. We've taken you into our hearts, and inshallah, may your deen be ever strong. Thank your mother for me. I think it's an amazing initiative, and let's grow stronger together as the sisterhood of the deen, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum to both you beautiful ladies. Thank you for being on the show. That's what we do on the show. Tears, hugs, smiles, and everything that goes down. The two sisters talking about, obviously, revert Muslims, revert Muslimas. There's an extremely strong support group. And alhamdulillah, that's what we're here to do, support them. Let's be a little more sensitive to the needs of revert Muslims. That's it from me on the show this morning, on a bit of an emotional note, because Aisha is tearing away here. So is Johara, and I've got, as you can see, I'm also getting a bit emotional. So let's end on a high note. Jazakallah for being with us. Take care on the roads as always. Until the next time, Khuda Hafiz from me, Julie Alli.